Okie doke, are we ready to start ducking here? Hold on 1 second because I don't have my Theory Forge screen.
It hasn't switched over quite yet.
Alright,
There
good.
we go.
I see me. Cool, cool. So here we are with Revivalcast. We've got a whopping 7 people. We're starting up again. We just have Sailkite and I on cam today, and we might be running it as regular hosts for the next several weeks. Valix has some personal stuff to take care of, so he's not around. I think Astral will be around next week, Astral Echo, and get a we're gonna try and get Lethality in to come in the following week. But today we're gonna start talking about the blogs that we haven't got to cover in the last couple of weeks because we've been off. So that's gonna be farming. I think it's the arena first, then farming, and then the crooks. So what have you been up to lately? Have you been? I saw you had one main post in the forums, but what else have you been up to while we've been off, game wise?
Oh man. Well, I mean, obviously, I've just been trying to keep up with everything on the forums as well, right? I mean, in addition to the fact that I posted something for once, it's also just there are more people now that are taking a look at the game. We have a couple of interesting new faces show up on the forums so far and in IRC, and so yeah, I've just been trying to keep up with everything and churn out ideas, of course, as best I can.
Yeah, I was really amused because I think I asked you a week or so ago if you had Twitter so I could tweet out that you would be, uh, you know, on cam with us, and you said you didn't have Twitter, and then I saw your post in the guild forum this week, and I was like, that's why he doesn't have Twitter, because he can't write in 140 characters. Like, that thing was
it's
verbose and huge.
it's true. It's
Wall
true.
of text.
I think in run on sentences
Yeah.
times like squared, and yeah, I probably can't even write a haiku to save my
Yeah.
life. Like, no chance.
Um,
No chance.
I mean, that's meaty writing right there. I think I had to read what you posted like 3 times just to get all of it down.
Well, it probably didn't
That's
make sense either. Like,
No,
to be
it
fair,
did.
my logical chaining.
You just
Uh,
had to read through it. It's pretty dense writing, but that's okay. I mean, that's why we need you on Theory Forge so you can theory craft.
I'll do my
Um,
best as
yeah.
always.
So I don't know how many topics we're going to get through, but we did have. It was really cool to see 3 guilds pop up and start recruiting this past week, and I did see a couple of new faces join the forums this week. So it's nice that we've got a steady roll of new blood coming in.
Yep, for sure.
Um, so we can jump on to talk about the arena blog. Um, uh, I guess the first thing that I didn't realize was that, and I look at the map all the time, several times per week. I'm looking at all over the map, and I did not realize that there is an arena actually in Crowns Rock. Somebody in the forums told me you have to scroll all the way in on Newton Park, and then you'll be able to see that's where the arena is, kind of in the southwest quadrant, I think, of Newton Park.
Yeah. Yep, and there's actually there are a few more of those zoomed in little details. I'll let people comb the island to find those, but yeah, yeah, there is an arena of some description in Krantz Rock. Though I imagine it wouldn't. I mean, it's probably going to be fairly tame, boxing and maybe a couple of dog fights or something like that. But yeah, it's there. It's there, for better or for worse. So an interesting juxtaposition, I think, that it's in Newton's side, given that Newton's side is supposed to sort of be kind of artsy fartsy,
Yeah, I
hipsterish.
mean, I was thinking of, Central Park, you go and you walk your dog there, maybe, run your horses along the path or something like that, and there might be stray animals, beasts running around from the arena. That could be cool. So the blog says that the arena is going to be run by a gambling guild. So I'm hoping that that means it'll be spectator. We can grab some popcorn, grab a seat, sit down and watch whatever the festivities are. And the most important part of that is sitting, I guess. Hopefully we can sit.
Well, no. I mean, I don't know. Now that we have UFC, I suppose this isn't exactly a standing room only kind of deal. But I mean, I think that at least as far as depictions of underground or overground fight clubs in other venues and such, that it's generally a standing deal, right? You have a crowd of people standing around, two or more people or things duking it out for.
Well, I guess it depends on if it's is it a fight club basement? That would be standing room probably. But I was thinking if it's in a park, we'll actually get a real arena. We'll get to go there and sit and spectate. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I could see like a little bleacher stand thing. Depending on exactly the nature of what the particular one is. I could see it, right, or both, right? Bleachers for the nobility to chill out and get a nice view on things, and then the standing room for the hoi
and that would
polloi.
kind of be interesting to see how they keep the spectators safe. If they keep the spectators safe, maybe we'll have some bulls running up into the into the stands. There was a YouTube video of that happening in Spain a couple of weeks ago. The bull jumped up into the stands and started running over people. Um, yeah, how would they separate that space to make sure that the spectators are safe? I
Well,
don't even know if they're thinking of that.
I mean, I guess it depends a little bit on the particular things. I mean, if it's just people, right, then you can set up a wooden fence or something, or string some ropes across, right, or in a pen or something, and just do it that way. And dog fighting, right? If you have a
Well,
sunken.
I'm not as worried about the dog. So that's just a story just popped in my head. So, geez, it's almost 20 years ago now. I was in the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and I was participating. One of the jobs that I had was as a live chess piece, and the fight coordinators taught us how to fight. We'd have a routine fight that we do every week. And so I'm on the chessboard one day, and the two fight coordinators are doing their scene. They've done it a couple of times. It's been like a month, and one of them is out. He takes his sword and he swings it around, and the other guy's sword goes flying out of his hand. It goes in this perfect, beautiful parabola up in the air and starts coming down, point first, into the stands. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like, how did they do that? How is that gonna end? And the fight coordinators were both like, what are we gonna do? And some guy from Africa in the stands stood up, whoosh, caught it pommel first, and saved somebody's ass. And of course, got free run of the place for the rest of the day because they were like, "Oh, we don't know what would happen."
Nice. Oh man.
So that's the kind of thing I'm just wondering about. Is there some kind of protection that
Right.
the spectators are going to have?
Well, we'll have nets and we'll have magnets. I think that'll stop it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, if it's just boxing and stuff and like brawling and whatever, you're like
yeah.
the most that's gonna fly out is someone's tooth into someone else's eye, right? Some poor spectator. But
But I'm just wondering,
otherwise,
there's would one is it a slave gladiator who wants to try and escape? What could those possibilities be? I just don't know.
well, I mean, I wouldn't expect that particular dynamic at Crown's Rock, right? I mean, maybe criminals, doing
Yeah,
some of like the Roman, yeah, I mean the Roman criminalia thing. Um, but otherwise, I mean, probably just people who want to fight for a living but don't want to get involved with the business and nastiness of having to kill a whole bunch, or whatever particular qualms one might have with that lifestyle, and so they can get paid to beat people up and not have to worry about losing their life all the time.
Yeah, the blog said that the guardsmen in town might try and participate in that just so they can get some coin on the side. So yeah, it could be relatively tame, and especially it could start out quite tame and just be dogs and people boxing and stuff like that. It did say that the structural upgrade as revenue is gained, and then that would also open up the inventory for more types of fights. So we might even see the arena grow. I mean, that could be cool. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, for sure. I'm guessing it uses the same system that road and neighborhood upgrades use at some level, right? So then, yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to put, if either the guild, gambling guild that manages it can just put money through it directly, or through, politically manipulating Newton's side's vote, then they could, put funds towards upgrading that venue, and making stands and bleachers and a safer arena to avoid criticism over someone getting stampeded by 30 poodles or something like that. But yeah, and then yeah, I mean, I imagine it's that system, and so anything that would apply would to that system as a whole would then be usable for that particularly for upgrading the venues, and then that would apply as well for any arena established in any city, I would expect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering also how much more we could support the arena. So, like, could we craft armor and like we give the arena, we supply the arena with armor and weapons, and that becomes like we are the go-to crafters for the arena. Can we
I mean,
donate that?
I don't see why not, right? I mean, assuming that, I mean, again, this would depend a little bit on the exact systems of whether the crafting guild is or not crafting, excuse me, whether the gambling guild is technically just a guild that's maintained by NPCs primarily or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I guess you could easily get a contract to make blunted swords or untipped lances, right? I mean, not for Newton's side particularly, right? But I mean, if you're thinking of whatever, what movie is that? With the jousting, and the guy has a tipped lance that he's not supposed to.
Right.
Whatever, that thing. And so you provide the nice equipment that's safe so that no one dies and causes an uproar or whatever, things like that. Or you would just go find the people, right, and be like,
Well, it
hey,
did say
yeah.
that. It also said the blog said that the gambling guild provides gear to kind
Right.
of equal the playing field. So it could just be that they have a monopoly on that. And
Yeah, and so they'd either have a contract out with people on the rock, or they would, or wherever, or else they have in-house people that do it. Um, either way would make sense. It's just whichever would make the most particular sense in the instance. Um, but yeah, I mean,
yes,
someone has to do it, right? I mean, the
right.
materials don't come out of nowhere.
Well, especially in revival, that's the hope. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe it's donated from dead characters. Who knows? Um, but yeah, I was wondering, like, does that have to be replenished? Does that armor or gear get damaged over time after, being used day after day? But I was wondering too if, like, can we make armor for the animals? Like, what if
I,
the animals are going in and fighting, and we want to armor those things? I just wonder. I don't even know if that's if we can do that for our pets or whatever we're going to be sending into battle ourselves.
I mean, I would guess that as far as like the systems go, that it would probably be doable, right? I mean, I'm guessing that pretty much um, all creatures and characters are probably the same technical like class in terms of programming. Like they probably all have the same overarching functions,
Hmm.
and so you could basically an animal being a character that has zero inventory space or something. It might not work exactly like that, but in theory, you know, if it can have an equipable inventory, right, then as long as there would be a way to, you know, lore-wise develop animal armor, uh, horse armor, guys, buy it for $5. Then I suspect you could go ahead
I
and
just think it would be interesting to see that. I don't know if they're thinking along those lines, but it could be cool. Um, so yeah, we've got structure upgrades. We've got the weapons. The guards fight for extra coin. Oh, the cheating. That's what I was thinking about. The cheating, cheating, cheating. Because I don't know what other kinds of cheating could there be. So it could be that you try and bring in some contraband gear. Maybe you down a potion before you go in. It says if the guards catch you cheating, they will kill you on sight. So
yeah, it would gear would be sort of the most obvious one, right? That would be classified as like a kill on sight deal. Would be, you know, bringing a knife into a, you know, bare knuckle boxing fight, or, you know, something equivalent. Um, but even just breaking, you know, the martial rules in place, like, you know, no nut shots or something, right? Or don't rake the eyes or whatever, right? I mean, that wouldn't necessarily be punishable to the same degree, right? But I mean, if you're
I don't know. That
rigging
seems like
matches or
it's yeah, but I mean, I think you could because it's all stances and stuff, right? So you could
right, okay, yeah,
inadvertently, you know, hit somebody. I don't. Uh,
right, yeah. I mean, I suppose it's possible there's a dirty fighting stance, like a
yeah,
dirty
it's
fighting
reminding
arm
me of
stance.
there's a biblical thing where I think it's in Leviticus that says if you if two men are fighting and the wife comes in and grabs one of the men by the balls, then uh, she gets her hand cut off or put to death or something like that. There's a whole thing about that scenario in there. I don't know.
I
I
need
don't
to
know why that
reread
would need to be
Leviticus,
in there.
man. I mean, I
Because that
know there's some
happens all
really
the
cool stuff in
time. Is that two
Leviticus, but
dudes are
like,
fighting and the wife comes in and grabs the other guy's balls.
right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, with the stances, I think you might inadvertently hit a lot of places. I don't know how that'll work. We'd have to see how the combat mechanics work in detail.
Right. I mean, if it's like chivalry in some sense, right, where you do have a reticule and you can aim, right, and you're not just doing purely animation based stuff like Dark Souls, right, or something like that. I mean, it's all still animation based, but yeah. Then I suppose you could aim, you know, an uppercut for someone's, you know, uh, someone's genitals or something like that, or you can aim a kick for someone's genitals, or, you know, aim a jab at someone's eye and skull, right, or something like that.
But you could maybe bring in a stance. I mean, I don't know if there's a martial style, because right. So if we're thinking boxing, right, you can't do kneeing and all that stuff. So maybe there's some styles that would come in like that. Like you, we're supposed to just stick to boxing stances or whatever.
Right, and I imagine that would be geographically constrained, or constrained by the tastes of the particular, you know, guild and clientele, right? Like, I think it would be really cool if there were um, effectively like a capoeira. I think I'm pronouncing that right,
Mm.
capoeira. The
Capoeira, yeah.
yeah, the I guess, is it Brazilian? No, it's not Brazilian. It is Brazilian. Either way, the it's a really cool martial art dance thing. It's a fascinating practice. But like, I think it'd be really cool to see like a capoeira club, effectively, like a really sort of, you know, almost artistic, you know, expression of martial arts somewhere. I mean, this wouldn't necessarily be in Krauts Rock, likely, but, you know, somewhere
Yeah, I
else
mean
that maybe
that's
we don't
really
know.
cool because somebody was in the forums. I think they were asking about flashy fighting styles, and I was
Yeah,
thinking I would love to see the Drunken Monk.
yeah, for
But I
sure.
hadn't even thought about capoeira. I mean, that didn't pop into my head, but that would be cool too. Yeah, I hope we have, or you know, swashbuckling, something where you know some of our stances has a little bit of flair.
Right,
Uh,
yeah, some
be really
fun,
cool.
unexpected moves to it, for sure. Um, Yeah, I mean, I don't know lore wise what would be the best source for a Capoeira esque, thing, or at least with the mindset of Capoeira. But yeah, I mean, drunken monk, anything fun like that, or even like Aikido or something to a lesser extent, I think would be really interesting to see. Uh, just aesthetically, right? I mean, the animations would be fun too, right? Just do some
Hmm.
crazy weird
I hope so. Yeah.
twisting.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, that'd be
One of the other cool things, I'm going to move on to farming in a second, but one of the other cool things is that the gladiators can be under the protection of specific gods.
yeah, or at least a specific god, as far as we know so far. So Barack. I don't know
Barack,
exactly how
yeah,
to
something
pronounce it.
like that, yeah.
Barack Obama. Thanks,
Yeah.
Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's our I guess our god of honorable combat or something. I mean, I don't exactly know. He probably has many different epithets and facets to him depending on where you go. But yeah, so there's a god dedicated to your duels and your arenas and your brawling and stuff. Looks fun,
Well, I
man.
mean, for all we know, Cthulhu could be the god of grappling, right? You want to grapple somebody, and
Right. Yeah, this is my tentacle stance. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's some deep stuff in there that kind of moves us beyond stuff that I haven't seen. And again, I think, like they said in the blog, it's really nice to have a space where the arena is really meaningful, and adds revenue to the city. I mean, does all kinds of stuff that we normally don't see. So
Yep. I mean, and it's a lobby too, right? So I mean, it plays into all sorts of local politic game and maybe larger politic game. Depending on if a certain nation state tends to ban a particular type of gambling or something, right?
mhm.
I mean, I know there are cultures that have bans on gambling and things like that in real life. So I mean, I think it would make sense for a movement like that to arise at some point, and then all sorts of fun political game going on in terms of promoting or preventing that particular agenda. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I like it as a viable thing, right? Because I mean, it's a truer arena in a world sense, right, than a WoW arena or a Star Wars Galaxy arena type thing, which is it's deathmatch or 1v1 dueling deathmatch stuff. Um, but I don't know. I think it's fun because you can still have your duels to the death outside of that context, right? And
Mhm.
hopefully they'll be given even more fun context in terms of story and narrative and character dynamics, whereas the local combat entertainment stuff can just be local combat entertainment for people to enjoy. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of cool that different areas will have different degrees and restrictions on how far the combat can go. Some places fights to the death will be illegal, and maybe some places fights to the death will be required. Who knows?
oh yeah,
Um,
I could totally see that for sure.
so let's move on to farming. I don't think we're going to have time for our third blog, the crux, especially if we have Q&A. But
We'll
so
do our best.
farming. I mean, I don't think of farming in real life, so uh, this one kind of threw me a little bit for a loop. But it starts off with us having farmable space on a grid, but I didn't really notice how many plots will be in a grid. So I'm guessing we have at least four if it's a grid.
Yeah.
We'll
So
start with
right, I
it.
guess I mean that makes sense, right? Uh, Definitely makes sense. I mean, so obviously, I mean, at the very least, different properties in different locations will have different amounts of total farmland, and then I'm guessing that land will be divided into a grid as such. I mean, rereading the grid thing, I'm gonna guess that it operates on the same basic principle as the housing does. So housing has, I guess they're called parcels or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, where all of the space within a house is broken into 4 by 4 by 4 meter um,
Mm-hmm.
cubes, right? Treated accordingly according to those dimensions and measurements, right? So I'm gonna guess that the grid thing in this case probably follows the general cast of that tech, where everything will basically fall into somewhat standardized units of manipulation. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I guess so. One thing could be said, which is, I'm pretty sure it's been mentioned that you'll be able to do like casual garden windowsill type plant stuff without having to have farmland proper, right? So I think that stuff would be independent, and so you could still do that no matter what, and not have to worry about the exact technicalities of how the grid thing works. But for the farmland, then it would be subject to those considerations, and go from there. I mean, it basically just has to do with what's the term? What's the term? Crop. I mean, it's not crop rotation. It's like if you go on a farm. I mean, okay, so I've done like I have family friends in North Carolina who farm a number of small animals and crops for their local area, and then I help my sister out with some barn work. So I have a little bit of exposure to like anything short of like super crazy, agrarian farming. Um, and basically every crop and animal more or less just needs space, um, both from a technical standpoint of needing food, right? And so it needs to have pastures for goats and horses and stuff to graze, and or cows and whatnot to graze on grass, and keep that going through them, and then you'd have whatever supplemental food you'd be feeding them as desired, according to the techniques of the time. But everything needs space also because at least as far as animals go, some animals get very territorial, and they can be really problematic if they're interacting with each other. And so having sort of segregated, unitized spaces for different animals and different crops just makes it easier to manage all of them as a whole, because you can dedicate all of your time and attention to one particular thing and one set of techniques without having to worry about exactly how it's going to interface with things that you're not prepared for from other stuff running into your field and being awkward.
So, does it make sense to always have some animals, even if you're like, I guess the first, well, like maybe if I was doing a rice farm, I don't necessarily need animals for that, or would you probably
Right.
just have chickens because you might as well? I don't know. I'm thinking
Yeah.
if you were doing corn, that's easy to feed the chickens, so you might as well have chickens. But I don't know if it's worth your while to do just all crops and no animals. I don't know.
Right. Well, I think generally the scenario, and this goes a little bit outside of my actual knowledge of farming, but just sort of thinking about it strategically, like if um, if the soil that you're in is good for a particular crop, right? So let's say you're growing corn, and you know by either testing or just by observation, or what have you, like because your neighbor's corn grows really well, that you can plant corn in this part of the field, and it'll do pretty well, right? So in that case, you don't really need to apply fertilizer or anything to fix the
Oh,
soil, right? And that's partly what crop rotation does, is that different crops take out and put in certain nutrients back into the soil, right? And so by sort of daisy chaining those things around, you can you can spare having to use fertilizer and other techniques to get the nutrients you need for a proper crop. Um, Basically, I mean, it's taking advantage of everything that's there. Uh, but if you're in bad soil for by whatever condition, and you have a bunch of cow manure, or chicken poop or whatever. I mean, it all has something in it that something can grow out of. So if you,
animal parts, because I think the myth is that the Indians taught the Native Americans taught the Pilgrims to use a little bit of fish as fertilizer.
I mean,
So,
it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. I don't know.
mhm,
I've not heard that
mhm,
particular thing, but I mean, sure, right?
mhm,
Like it's organic matter. Stuff comes
mhm,
out of it, so
mhm,
I'm sure something grows pretty well on fish.
right.
Well, actually, uh, it's funny that you mentioned that because if you notice on the Northgate Farms description on the map, it talks about there having been a fish famine, I guess. Either way, a lack of fish at some, or maybe the crops fail. I can't.
Hmm.
Let me check on this because I'm actually kind of interested. So either way, either the crops failed or the farms failed, right?
Hmm.
And then there was a little blurb about how they were trying to fix the soil using fish parts or
Wow. Okay. Uh-huh.
courses. It's right. So I'll read it.
Yeah.
Um, Northgate Farms is one of the older neighborhoods of Crowns Rock, second only to the Westgate Farms nearby and the lumber and stone camps of Holliston and Cutterston. Originally a small fishing village at the top of the island, the farms of this neighborhood grew up to take on greater importance when the fishing community on the Rock's northern shore failed, creating a fear of famine in the city's early history. Following an old tradition, the northern village began to turn their fishing waste into the soil, and soon the Northgate Farms were feeding more people than the fishing ever had.
There you go. Okay. So
So
that
by subliminal connection.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So that makes sense. Okay, so that makes more sense to me. I had forgotten about the fertilizer. So that makes sense. That's why you would probably want at least one tile of your plot to have some animals on there so it could help fertilize the rest of it. And I didn't actually see that part in the details of the blog, but it's fairly detailed farming, so that might very well be in there. So it says uh, if you build a chicken coop raises 6 chickens, and that will take up a large part portion of one tile, and then you can. Oh, and it says, and you won't need another tile for pasture. Okay, and then you can either do the rest larger animals, or you can do
Other crops and stuff.
crops.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. Okay,
Yep.
so that makes sense to me. Okay. It's kind of weird that I'm going to learn all about farming, and my mother grew up on a farm. Um, and there was a farm behind when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we moved into the suburbs, and we moved on to um, part of a farmer's 40 acres and a mule.
Right.
Um, that's what they took the land for our houses from. So we did have cows and pigs crossing over the fence into our backyard for the first several years when I was a kid. But it's going to be funny if I learn how to farm from a meow.
Right. Yeah. At least generally, yeah, the
Yeah.
form of it for sure. And I mean,
Uh,
it looks like there's a lot of homage to at least the idea of a lot of farming technique, right? In
yeah.
terms of land division, and the fact that the fact that farming is a very time sensitive um, endeavor, and it takes a large amount, like it pays off over time, right? That you have to spend a couple months or a few months to just get the thing ready and prepared and growing strong, and then you have to hope that nothing bad happens to it, right? That you don't get a
Yeah, I mean
flood
it's kind
or a
of cool
drought.
that they're gonna go so detailed that you have to start by tilling the soil, and then you have to plow, and I'm wondering if that means you have to train the animal for the plow and keep it happy. Like,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure
what
there
does
could
that
be some
even mean?
crossover, right, with the pet, well, animal
Animal
taming
lore.
system,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's probably what you use in the first place for any non-domesticated animals, right? Um, and then anything domestic is just domestic, right? But yeah, I mean, if you have to go get some fresh draft animals out of somewhere and there's none, left that you can use nearby, right? Then obviously you'd want to get some taming technique going on there to,
Hmm.
make it not so painful. But yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, like, you can till land just as a person. It's hella inefficient.
That's what they said in the blog too.
It's
Yep.
hella inefficient even in real life. It's crazily hard work, ridiculously inefficient when you have other options like using a draft animal or modern tilling machines that do a really fantastically efficient job of it. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess if you have a draft animal, you at least want to keep it fed and healthy enough to be able to do whatever work you'd be loading onto it. But whether or not it has like an internal happiness sadness score, I mean, I'm sure it will. Like it would not surprise me in the least if there's a way to boost its effectiveness by keeping it placated. But yeah, I imagine you'd at least need to keep it healthy enough to do your work. Either by an internal stamina thing or however they choose to implement it. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to use a diseased and starving ox to plow your fields, it's probably not going to go over terribly well.
And then we had it mentioned that the carpentry skill would help the quality of the coop and the kennels. So there's kind of some crossover into some. I mean, I guess it's technically under a farming category. Well, not necessarily under a farming category. So,
Yeah.
just it's kind of interesting. I mean, maybe that also feeds into whatever I said, the happiness of your animals,
Right. Yeah.
keeping them in a properly in a high quality coop or kennel or
Yeah. Or
stable
shelter
or
or
whatever.
whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to be raising horses on Crown's Rock, right? But if you're raising or
There's the
managing
stables.
horses, right? Yeah, stables or at least a run-in shed if they're outdoor horses and stuff like that. Um,
So,
because that all helps with um, keeping your horses not insane and or
mhm,
keeping them alive or
mhm.
uninjured, right? Depending, or at least not super upset. So, yeah, I mean, the carpenter thing is interesting. So, I mean, I guess basically there's a like anyone can sort of, if they have the materials right, up and make a coop, right? But only someone with carpentry skill would be able to make a really effective coop. Uh, and whether that translates into higher egg production in the case of chickens, or better quality meat and materials and eggs and stuff. I mean, I guess that's those are really the only two things. You can either make it better or make it more, um, in terms of the payoff for making it better. Or protection, right? Foxes not getting in and killing all your hens.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess those are the main three things, right? Protection, speed slash quantity. I mean, because they equate to the same thing over time, um, and quality. So yeah, I mean that would basically be that would be the impetus behind I think a lot of the implementations of these
Mhm.
particular within farming systems, right? I mean, because ultimately higher quality food will lead to or higher quality staple crops and meat will lead to higher quality produced food, assuming someone can cook it, and that will lead to more satisfaction among NPCs or better buffs for player characters and stuff like that. So I mean, I guess it ultimately pays off, right, for having a more in-depth system that allows for a greater variance of quality, which then allows for players and NPCs to effectively, compete better, right, for the same market.
Yeah, you just had me thinking of because I don't know what goods I've typically been thinking about shipping. I don't know, gems and cloth, but I hadn't thought about shipping like live chickens to Congarai.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't actually know how profitable or how effective that would be, but I mean, I suppose if you had the foodstuffs and the
Our chickens make the best eggs in the land.
right, right, yeah, Crown's Rock's best egg. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you have the technology to do it, you could totally ship chicken or any other crop or animal right back and
Yeah,
forth, maybe, right, or at least
yeah.
I guess if there's an effective set of preservation systems, either salting things or whatever, then I suppose you'd be able to alternately just preserve them and then ship them that way and not have to worry about the logistical cost of shipping a coop of chickens across the ocean. Oh goodness. Yeah, that carnivorous bird stole my chickens. Arr! Carnivorous whales stealing the chickens.
So you kind of had mentioned that we're gonna have to worry about the weather conditions, certain conditions. I guess that would include lighting too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
But it was cool. They said that some crops won't even grow if they're not in the right location. So
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
it's not.
I mean, it makes sense too, right? I mean, it that alone, right? The fact that you can't grow everything everywhere allows for trade, right? At a very elementary level, right? Assuming that particular crops are desired in other locations that can't grow them effectively. Yeah. Uh, but then also just it adds more, more depth and interest to the life of a farmer who has to, pay attention to the weather and maybe, ask uh, a stargazer or a meteorologist of some, description to produce an almanac for.
Well, yeah, that's what they said. It's going to impact the calendar. The seasons are going to impact the calendar. What we can grow when. We're going to want to keep track of that.
Yep.
Especially if we try to do crop rotation, that would be interesting too. But the other thing that you sparked in my head is it was so weird to me. Maybe 5 years ago is when I started hearing about this happens, especially in Europe. They hate they hate the U.S. because we call things like cheddar cheese, and it's not from cheddar, Swiss cheese. It's not really Swiss. Bologna isn't from Bologna, and you have to have the right. It has to be from the right province, so that could be impactful in revival too. I mean, we
You
might
mean like
have tags.
imitation goods or something?
Well, that we might have location tags that
Uh,
designate, this is high quality because it's from this specific location.
Gotcha.
Um, and if it's not grown in this location, it doesn't get that tag, and we know you know, it's not that high quality stuff. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
going to go there, but it just seems like that's a possibility when you think about what kinds of tags can be added to items.
I don't think you would necessarily. I mean, unless the tagging system is what technically gives everything its quality, right? I mean, assuming quality is just a variable that you save to the particular item, you know, thing, then you wouldn't necessarily need to put a tag on it, except for appraisal or
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
connoisseur
that's what I mean.
stuff.
Yeah.
Where you go to a wine tasting or something, right? And someone can tell that this isn't actually a I I don't know, a tide zen something,
Yeah.
right? Like whatever,
Yeah.
it's not actually Littleton's 590 drought of whatever the hell it is. But
That's what.
because the tags don't match up and they have a tag system for determining that. But I mean, as far as strict quality goes, you wouldn't necessarily need to bring the tags in. But I like the idea though
Yeah, I'm
that there
thinking
can
that
be
would be a special thing, not a general thing, but that there would be some stuff that you know is so high quality because it's from a specific
yeah,
region.
a specific place or confluence of circumstances. Oh yeah, no, I definitely like that because I mean it lets you do other fun stuff too, right? In terms of you know, or like herbalism, for instance, right? If you grow certain herbs during, say, I don't know, um, blue moon or something, I don't know, whatever. But pick a meteorological or other occurrence, right? I mean, maybe even growing a particular crop in higher low magic ley line concentrations, right, or with higher low flux, right, could either influence the quality of or impart certain properties to a particularly sensitive um, crop or I mean herb or in this case it wouldn't be a crop I don't think because it's kind of too large a thing to make it really special but yeah I mean if you're growing particular flowers or berries that you use for a particular alcohol or spirit and you can do fun stuff like that too right with
Hmm.
saying check all the tags
Hmm.
and things aligned so now you have this especially potent elixir uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
without having even needing to do anything to it.
Hmm. Yeah. And so one of the things they mentioned is how the farming can affect the economy of the area. So that makes me wonder if just regular schmoes will be interested. You know, we're not farmers, but we might be interested in um, making sure that the farms in the area are successful. Um, you know, I don't know if we as individual players, just Joe Schmo players, would be wanting to subsidize the farms in some way.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, at the
if
very least, highly productive farms means you have surplus goods that you can either save, um, in the event of a, a famine or a drought or something that, wrecks your crops and, makes everyone really dour and upset and liable to crime or, you know, rebellion or whatever the hell else hunger will do to people, as it will. Or you could then take your surplus, assuming that you feel that you have enough stored, and then you could sell it, right, which gives you more money in your coffers, which then lets you as a neighborhood implement more upgrading projects and improvements to either the neighborhood or to the city at a large enough level, right? And so you can upgrade your roads and upgrade your whatever else your security and stuff by effectively getting a good stable crop going that you can sell consistently for funds to implement the rest of everything. And it's not the only way to make money, right? I mean, any way you can make money would effectively work for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that has me thinking of what kind of. I was thinking of how we might pay attention to what's happening in the city. You know, whether that's going to the job board and seeing how we can help through tasks, but also that has me thinking of the newspaper. There's a newspaper in town. You know, do we need to be paying attention to that to see what the headlines are? You know, famine imminent. You know, this farm is. You know, their business is going down, and because I was thinking, it seems like there's so much. You know, often when I think about going into MMORPGs, especially at end game or towards the end game, often it's towards the end of a level where a lot of the quests seem to be dying out. So can take me a while sometimes to find a quest that I can solo. Um, and this just has me thinking you go into the game and there's just all kinds of stuff to do.
Oh yeah.
Um, and seems like there's various places you can go in to find out what you might be interested in doing, like the job board. But again, you might go in and see that this farm is failing. Maybe they need some extra hands to pick the crops or something like that. I mean, it's just kind of interesting. You might
Yeah.
always have something to do.
Yeah, I mean, it allows for seasonal and migratory workers too, right? I mean, whether or not it would be profitable or sustainable, it depends on the specifics, yeah. But I mean, just the idea that hey,
That might
the
be alt number 16. I hadn't even thought about that.
right, yeah, you're right. That
That'll get my
someone
character that's moving out of, because I think several of my characters will be staying in Crowns Rock, but
plenty of others will go outside.
that's a good reason to get one that's traveling around, huh?
Right. I mean, and if anything, it gives people who are just moving around generally and somewhat nomadic, but point to point nomadic rather than roughing it nomadic would be able to show up, read a job board, be like, hey, I have a little bit of experience of farming from when I was a kid, right? So I'll help out these folks, make a little bit of coin, gather up what I need to move to the next place and move on, right? I mean, it allows for a degree of judgment and evaluation in your character's head in terms of determining, maybe I don't want to be a bouncer at this bar because I'm not really suited to that, even though it's the only other thing available. So I'll just go work on the farm for these folks and do that instead to guarantee myself at least a little bit of money, rather than risking something that might leave me with a broken jaw or whatever might happen befall you there. So yeah.
Cool. So we have a question from Cersei. and I'm not sure I quite understand it. I'm going to read it as is, and then you can try and parse it. So it reads, how viable would you think it to be for not a fighter, but a better to sneak in a cursed weapon or boxing glove or whatever to be snuck to the person she is betting against? Um, so that
Oh, okay. I,
is,
I, I understand it.
so
Um,
that's sneaking a cursed weapon or whatever to the opponent, right?
I mean, it's
Yeah.
rigged. So it's if I'm betting that
Oh, for a
Jonda,
better, someone who is betting. I got it.
right?
Okay.
So yeah, if I'm wagering that Jonda is going to win this particular fight, right? But I don't actually think that he's going to win this particular fight because he's not even dark horse. He's literally just like bottom three people in the circuit, right? And then I think, well, since I'm the only one of two guys out of 150 betting on Jonda, right? If I make Jonda not lose, win by the other guy getting screwed over, then I can make some serious bank on this, right? And so you go and you do your corruption thing, and you try to cause the other guy to lose so that your dark horse can win. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think it would be. I mean, if you had the logistics and the wherewithal to do it, and you had someone to be able to sneak into the armory, and for instance, that your opponent's got particular gloves they always use because he's got them marked with, the number of, he's got notches for all the people he beats in his gloves, right? Then you replace him or something, something like that. But I mean, assuming that you have the savvy to do it, then I imagine it's totally something you could pull off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It kind of makes me want to delve into the life of the crook, but I'm not going to go too far. But it sounds even from that blog that that is something that a crook might be interested in. That's kind of a cool concept, a cool motivation for a crook, I would think. So, um, right, you might be able to bribe the guards. Um, you might be able to distract the guards. Uh, I mean, wow, there's so many ways that you could do that. You might try and infiltrate the people who are supplying the armor and gear. Like maybe you are that person who normally
Spit shines
supplies
the
armor and
boots.
gear, and
Yeah.
you. I mean, there's all kinds of yeah. So you could bribe the guards. You might be able to bribe the manufacturer of the manufacturers of the gear. Huh.
Yep. Or if there's or if the fighters have like I mean effectively pages or squires. I mean not quite, right? But if they have like
Hmm.
particular assistants or servants or slaves, either on behalf of the guild or on behalf of them individually, depending, um, then you could try to put you know pressure on that person to you know say, hey, these are the gloves that your fighter's going to wear, please. And if you say no, just remember your sister. Um, Mill out on the on the other side of the water here. I have friends who might be interested in meeting, kind of thing. Um, but it's also not just a particular individual bettor could be corrupt or crooked, right? Like the guild as a whole could be, gambling guild as a whole can be crooked. You could
Hmm.
have, essentially a mafia yakuza kind of dealio running their gambling
Hmm.
ring because it's
Hmm.
profitable. Also rigging matches,
Hmm.
to benefit, to get larger spikes of profit for particular individuals and do something like that. I mean, assuming that everything is as porous as it kind of looks, right? Um, then it would work, just as an after the fact kind of thing. Like it will end up having work. Um, by virtue of all the little things bumping into each other. So, yeah, I mean, I think it could be done. Yeah.
I had been wondering if one of the ways we typically think of cheating is somebody throwing the fight. So um, you know somebody just lays down and the guards are like, you're cheating, so they come in and attack that guy. And then I was thinking, so what if you sneak a potion in so that it looks like the person looks like he's throwing the fight, but he's
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
this
Put a
digital
knockout
potion that
drought or
got
something.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Got-
one thing that Cersei mentioned in the chat, she was like, about this question, not that I would do such a thing. And it reminded me of it's kind of a side story, but um, where I went to high school, my high school was one of the affluent um, schools in the county, um, and one of the top-notch schools in the county. So um, after college, my next door neighbor's little sister is 8 years younger than we are. So by the time she was in high school, I came home to visit, and our high school. So 8 years after me graduating from high school, the high school that the poor high school on the other side of the tracks was having a gun problem. Um, we didn't have guns in school in my day at my school, really, or at the other school, but it's a new day. It's like the early 90s by this time. That's how old I am. So my school still would not have guns in the school, but they were financing the guns for the other school.
Okay.
I was like, that's what we would do.
I mean, okay.
We'll finance it
Oh, goodness.
because we got the cash for that. But we don't actually have guns in our own school.
Run your proxy wars, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, that takes a special kind of
We're
entertainment. But
entrepreneurs.
yeah, really.
Yeah.
Oh
So,
goodness.
um, yeah. So that's fascinating too. Like the politics of I don't know. I'm just jumping back over to. I guess I'm thinking of politicians as crooks, and how
I
they
am
might be
not a crook.
financing what's going on in the arena, and politicians might be trying to throw fights too. Huh. Well,
Yeah.
I had written down too. Maybe we would have patrons that we're trying to support, or we would be patrons of the some of the gladiators. That I mean, that could
Oh,
be
sure. Yep. I mean, I
just
imagine you could see, you know, the chivalrous angle if someone so chose with the right circumstances. You could just see someone who's, a good friend, neighborhood, childhood friend of a particular fighter and roots for him and supports him and, gets him medical attention if needs be, and things like that. I mean, all sorts of reasonable, I think,
that's
interpersonal
the other
dynamics.
way to get them. So we have designated healers at the arena.
Botch the
Yeah,
surgeon.
that's interesting. That's interesting. Ah, Cersei's like devious. There's so many ways we could go with that. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another character might be Perks.
We're gonna
Interesting.
have to start cloning you, Diggs, and
I know.
we're gonna transport your mind into a master server that runs all the other Diggses at once. Uh,
That's fascinating. So I will say too, that was one of the snafus that I got into with um, on the guild forums this week because somebody set up their guild and they have lots and lots of rules and I'm chaotic, so I'm kind of anti-authority and anti-rules. And I was like, yeah, I couldn't join this because it's too rule centric. Um, and I think I got a PM saying, if you ever change to lawful, you should join us. And I said, well, the thing about that is when you say that, it makes me think one of my alts might choose to join your guild, depending on, what they're doing in the city. And he was like, no, no, for our guild, your job would be so time consuming, you could only have one character. And I'm like, that's why I can't join your guild. Because the way I think is more characters,
yep. Yep.
more, not one. Um, so, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. Okie doke. Well, we're at the end of our time.
Yep.
Um,
We didn't get a chance to talk about the criminal blog, and well,
yeah, not too
well,
much. Not too much.
we
We can
didn't talk
save that
about
for
it.
yeah.
We
We can save
skirted it.
that for next week. That's
Yep.
that's
We
that's
we
fine.
hinted at its existence, but yeah, we'll save that for next week. We're thinking that hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, Astral Echo will be back, and so we'll be back up to a 3-host stable at least for the day. And then, as Diggs mentioned, we have a couple other people lined up for the future to kind of try to get momentum going back on this thing, because I mean, we all love doing it, and we would automatically do it, hands down, just if we could. But unfortunately, just people have busy real lives.
Well, yeah, it's summer, so people are going to
Well,
be
yeah,
wanting to go on vacation and things like that. All kinds of stuff is going on.
yep.
I
But
think
we'll
the
do our
good thing
best.
for Valix is he's got another job taking his time up, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and he's
Um,
got a family too that
yeah,
I believe he tries to be pretty close to and active with. So,
yeah,
um, it's understandable. But yeah, we're still gonna do our best. We'll try to be here as many weekends as we can, as many 2 hour specials as we can swing, and yeah. So just keep an eye out. Keep an eye on the forums, and an eye on Twitter if needs be at TheoryForge. And I think that's it for now. So thank you for joining
yep,
us, and as always, have a great weekend and a great week, and farewell.
yep. Ciao.